there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, I did a video 1 or 2 videos ago on using your own stamps, and it is really important to make the most of the things that we have in our collection already, and making our own stamps seems like a really fun and easy and affordable thing to do. I have got many videos on my channel about making your own stamps from fun foam. However, today I thought I would use these scrapbook.com foam strips. Now these are of course adhesive on both ends. There are a lot that come in this package, but if you don't have the foam strips, then you could just use ordinary kids fun foam, and that is going to work almost identical. I am just cheating one of the steps because this already has adhesive on one side of the foam, so that's just something that I don't have to do. But otherwise, just cut yourself some really thin strips out of kids fun foam and attach them to your acrylic blocks that way. Now these ones are 9 inches long, and so I am just going to pop these over my acrylic block. These are of course adhesive on both sides. I love these foam strips for use in card making, so I thought they would make great stamps too. Now just so I can line this up, I've put a little grid there behind it. I'm going to use some 1-inch mint tape. This is just a low tack tape, and basically this is just going to mask off an area for me. I'm going to show you 2 versions of cards today, and kind of one is really simple, and the next one we're going to step it up, take it up a notch. So this one is going to be really simple and really easy to create, and the next one is a little bit more. So these are all things that you can do with using the strips, the foam strips. As I said in my other most recent video about DIY stamps, is that I prefer to use VersaFine Clair inks. These are pigment inks, and they stamp beautifully with all kinds of stamps, and particularly with foam. Now I have taken off the release paper from the foam strips. Once we add the ink, they won't stick to our paper. So usually if you were to adhere these down, these would obviously stick to your paper because they are adhesive on both sides of the foam strips. But once you add the ink, then you are perfectly fine. And all I'm doing, I have 3 strips popped on here unevenly. I'm using 3 different colors of VersaFine Clair inks. The yellow is Cheerful, the orange is Summertime, and the red is Tulip Red. Now I've just pulled off 2 of the strips at this point to add some singular little lines to kind of fill it in just a little bit more where I want to. And in fact, I don't think I end up using the tulip red on this one at all. I thought the 2 colors was plenty. This becomes a busy little strip for a background. I'm going to peel off that masking tape, but I'm not going to lose it. This can still be reused another time, so I generally just stick it down onto my desk. And then to finish this off and kind of turn this into a card, I'm going to cut this down just a tiny little bit because this is a card front at the moment. So I'm going to pop this down onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base. So I'm making the card front 4 by 5 1/4 inches, so it just has that nice little border all around it. I am using the All the Birthday stamp set from Concord and 9th. You guys have seen this one many times. It's a favorite, and it is very versatile. In my stamping platform, I'm going to pop down a couple of the stamps. As I said, this is a really simple card that I created in less than 15 minutes. In my stamping platform, I use these Sizzix sticky grid sheets, and that's why I don't have to use any more magnets in my stamping platforms, because they have that nice amount of low tack, and I just pop some washi tape around the outside so that it stays in place. Then once I've stamped out Happy and Birthday, I stamped that in the tulip red color just so it stood off the page a little bit more. At this point, the card is a little too not quite right for my liking. So I'm going to take this panel here and use the tulip red color, which is what I stamped the sentiment in, and just go direct to paper with the ink pad and create myself a little border. I could have done this around the outside of my card front, however there just wasn't much room on either side of those sentiments, so I'm just going to create the little border a separate matting layer. I'm using some Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish. That's the liquid glue that I have in there in that little bottle. And then I'm going to pop that matting layer down onto my card base, and then at the end we'll do a couple more little things just to finish off this card a little bit more. The glue gives me a minute to kind of wiggle it into place, but apart from that, here is our pretty simple card that took me not much time at all to create. Now this time around, I'm going to be taking 2 of the strips, and they kind of stay together. I have got a slightly longer acrylic block here, and I keep all those little spare bits because I can pop those on the backs of cards, pop up sentiment strips and things. Then I'm going to take a single strip here for this one, and I'm just going to kind of create a little pattern, no rhyme or reason, just whatever I felt like. I've got 2 again this time, and I'm trying not to space them evenly. I'm trying to make sure there is different spaces between them. It kind of goes 1, 2, 1, 2, and then yeah, just making sure that it looks as random as I can pretty much get it. Once I have got those strips down on there, I'm going to take off the release paper and start my stamping again. This time I'm going directly onto my card base, so I have not got a card front layer. I was thinking I would do this in Morning Mist, which is a grey kind of colour in the VersaFine Clair range. However, once I kind of inked it up, I felt like it just didn't quite suit what I was aiming for. So I decided to switch over and use the VersaFine Onyx black ink, which is just the black pigment ink, pretty much from that line as well. So here's when I was inking it up and just thinking it looked a little bit light. It wasn't exactly, I was hoping to go for a really kind of punchy background here. So I thought I would switch it over and go with the black. Again, these are pigment inks. Now these work really, really well for stamping. You'll just have to be trial and error and use the inks that you have in your stash to see how they end up stamping with Fun Foam. But my experience is that Fun Foam stamps brilliantly, particularly using the VersaFine Clair ink. Any that stamps brilliantly for photopolymer or acrylic is going to stamp brilliantly with the Fun Foam. Other things such as using distress inks, which I don't find as crisp for stamping, then I'm not going to get as good impression. But that might be the look that you're going for, and that might be the kind of card feel that you want. So try what you have, and I've got, as I said, a lot of videos on my channel using Fun Foam. You can cut Fun Foam with your dies, and that way you can make stamps out of all of those. I mean, the opportunities are truly endless when it comes to making your own stamps. I'm a big advocate of this because it just extends our supplies. There are so many different ways that you can use them, so many different things that we have in our stash that we can use to create these extra little foam stamps, whether it be dies or whether it be cutters or trimmers, or whether you just use a pen or something sharp like I did in my last video to create your own backgrounds and patterns. As I said, lots of fantastic options. So I have just taken off a couple of the strips off here so that I can add another 1 or 2 stamps randomly. And then, as per usual, this is one of my favorites. This is the Flower Picking Friends from Simon Hurley. This lily might be my favorite flower ever. And I'm going to, I stamped it 3 times out on some cardstock, and I just stamped the lily. I actually masked off the stem, and I just stamped it 3 times in some VersaFine Onyx black ink, and then I heat embossed it with some Clair embossing powder. Then I have my Distress Oxide finger daubers here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of colour. I'm going to have 2 yellows and 1 orange. I'm not even getting out ink pads. I'm just using the ink that was left on the finger daubers. That's the perfect amount for me. And then once I add a little bit of ink on these, I'm actually going to take this little flower shaping tool, these little stylus, and just kind of dot some ink on there for these little lilies. I think that just adds a nice finishing touch, and I'm sure these aren't realistic, but lots of lilies have those extra little dots kind of going up into the white part. I love their on white lilies, so this is just my version of it. And I'm going to fussy cut these out so it doesn't bother me at all that my colouring, my foam inking has gone outside the lines. I always use my little cutter bee scissors. When it comes to fussy cutting, I think using some long bladed scissors would be really, really tricky. So it is good to have kind of a dedicated, nice, sharp, pointy ended pair of scissors for fussy cutting. Again, I've got the same stamp set, all the birthdays stamp set, and I'm going to pull out a couple of the little sentiments and just put this one together. This isn't too tricky at all. This one didn't take me long. The fussy cutting probably took me the longest of everything, but I'm just going to have a little happy birthday out there, and I'm actually going to put together 2 different sentiments because the happy from the happy birthday is actually part of a different little sentiment. So still from the same stamp set, but just I'm going to use only half of the sentiment. I popped these 3 little lilies in the corner here and popping some up on foam tape. Some are going to go a little bit more flat, and it's just a nice little arrangement there that's going to stick in the corner against those beautiful black bold lines on the background. And just stamping the birthday in the same black that I stamped the stripes in, so the VersaFine Onyx black. And then this is where I'm just going to quickly mask off that little birthday word. I use just a little bit of mint tape, just some low-tech tape, or just a post-it note, anything like that, so that you can just make sure you ink up half of it. You could also cut your stamp in half, that would be fine too, but this way was just as easy. I inked it up in the black, and this is about where I changed my mind and decided that actually I could do with a little bit more color on this card, given that it is a birthday card. So I'm going to switch it up and actually use some of the summertime ink from which I used in the first card, and it's just an orange crisp stamping pigment ink, and so I just thought it would go nicely with the orange that we had used in the flower too. Again, this one looks really plain and simple, but I'm going to add a couple of little gems here and there just to kind of add a little bit more, but you don't have to do this at all. You could use some Nuvo drops, you could use enamel dots, you could use gems, you can use anything that you have in your stash ready to go. And I just use a really cheap and cheerful little wax pencil that is nice enough. It has the strength to kind of pick them up, but it releases them really easily when you're popping them down onto a little bit of glue. And again, I just use my matte medium glue there, which is perfect. I know that that's going to hold these gems in place. It's a really strong glue. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have enjoyed this next video of creating your own stamps using some foam strips, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.